Mike Vrabel's scandal may have done something nobody inside Buffalo wants to admit publicly. It may have saved emotional oxygen inside the Bills organization. I know that sounds dramatic at first because when people hear the word scandal, they immediately think morality gossip, tabloid culture, or celebrity nonsense. But that is not really what this story is about. This story is about pressure because pressure is the hidden currency of professional sports. Talent matters, coaching matters, schemes matter, but pressure is what ultimately destabilizes organizations from the inside out. Before the Vrabel scandal detonated across New England, the pressure inside Buffalo was becoming suffocating. You could almost picture the atmosphere inside the Bills facility late at night. Assistant coaches walked dim hallways carrying coffee cups that had gone cold 2 hours earlier. Film cut ups flickered against dark office walls, while scouts rewound Josh Allen throws frame by frame, searching for reassurance. Executives spoke in strangely calm voices, like airline pilots trying to reassure passengers while turbulence kept getting worse outside the cabin. Underneath all of it sat one terrifying thought hovering over the organization like storm clouds over a stadium parking lot. What happens if Josh Allen stops performing miracles? That question mattered because Buffalo had become emotionally dependent on miracles. Organizations built on miracles eventually become unstable psychologically because miracles are impossible to schedule reliably. The fear had already started spreading through Buffalo the same way cigarette smoke used to spread through old Vegas casinos, slowing it slowly at first, and then suddenly everybody's breathing it, whether they admit it publicly or not. Bills fans understood this instinctively. Publicly, they posted optimism online. Publicly, they talked themselves into evolution and progress. Fans kept repeating phrases like Joe Brady is going to unlock another level. This offense is evolving. Buffalo is finally modernizing. But privately, the emotional atmosphere felt very different. That fan base studied preseason clips the same way nervous investors stare at stock tickers during market crashes, searching for signs that the market is not about to collapse underneath them. The reason was simple. Joe Brady was not Sean McDermott, and that difference mattered emotionally more than analysts would want to admit publicly. You see, Sean McDermott built the emotional infrastructure of modern Buffalo Bills football. He poured that concrete before Josh Allen became Superman. He stabilized the franchise psychologically. He turned Buffalo from an annual snowstorm dysfunction into a legitimate Super Bowl contender. Joe Brady felt different, though. He felt more like Silicon Valley, like a Silicon Valley startup culture. He sounded like one of those young AI founders that CNBC introduces using phrases like offensive innovator, creative mind, or even visionary play caller, while investors quietly wonder whether the company actually makes money consistently. That was the emotional atmosphere surrounding Buffalo entering The off season concealed panic, not collapse, not dysfunction, especially after that fiasco of a press conference that the owner and Brandon Beam held, where the Keon Coleman thing came up, and it just went off the rails from there. But something worse was going on: forced optimism, especially after Brandon Bean selected Joe Brady as the next ball head coach. Forced optimism is dangerous because NFL organizations are like expensive restaurants. The mood changes long before customers notice publicly. Coaches begin over explaining things. General managers start using phrases like continuity and culture too often. Coordinators start talking about trusting the process because emotionally they are trying to convince themselves the airplane is not losing altitude. That is what Buffalo felt like entering the off season, and Josh Allen sat at the center of all of it, especially coming off the loss in Denver in the playoffs, an ugly loss. At that point, Josh Allen no longer felt like a quarterback. He feels like emergency infrastructure. He feels like one of those giant electric generators cities roll into neighborhoods after hurricanes destroy the power. The lights stay on only as long as the machine keeps roaring loudly enough. But what happens if the machine sputters? That was the real fear hovering over Buffalo because the Bills' Super Bowl window no longer felt wide open. It felt expensive, heavy, like unpaid debt accumulating interest every January. Then the force entered the division, not through football, through chaos. The Mike Vrabel scandal hit New England like somebody setting off fireworks inside a cathedral during Sunday service. The metaphor matters because the Patriots sold discipline for what 20, 30 years the same way luxury brands sell exclusivity. New England became football's version of the Rolex watch or Mercedes Benz. The entire emotional identity of the franchise rested on structure, seriousness, professionalism, and emotional control. The Patriot Way became its own religion. This suddenly, and then suddenly, pictures surfaced, rumors spread, phones started buzzing. Executives began answering uncomfortable questions publicly. Once scandals enter sports organizations, every room changes temperature immediately. Now, every press conference felt rehearsed. Every smile looked strategic. Every silence felt suspicious. Reporters began circling the organization the same way helicopters circle wildfire zones, searching for signs the flames are spreading faster than officials admit publicly. That is when the pressure started moving across the AFC East. Pressure in sports behaves exactly like weather systems over oceans. One coastline gets hammered while another suddenly catches sunlight. Buffalo felt the emotional shift immediately. Fans who had spent months staring nervously at Joe Brady suddenly looked east towards Foxborough and thought, oh my God, maybe they are the unstable ones now. That matters much more than sports analysts usually understand. Rival dysfunction creates relief. Human beings do not actually require perfection to feel calmer emotionally. Sometimes people just need evidence that somebody else is falling apart too. Airplane turbulence works exactly like this. Nervous passengers often calm down when they see another passenger panic first because suddenly their own fear feels manageable by comparison. That is what New England became for Buffalo, visible turbulence. Now, the Patriots became the organization answering uncomfortable questions publicly. Now, the Patriots became the franchise hoping distractions would not infect the locker room. Now, the Patriots became the team trying to protect organizational focus while cameras search faces for emotional cracks. Meanwhile, Buffalo excelled. Not fully, of course. Josh Allen still has to save everybody. Joe Brady still has to prove he was not another overhyped offensive consultant disguised as a revolutionary genius because he could design clever third down motion packages. The Super Bowl expectations still sit over the city like unpaid student loans nobody wanted to discuss publicly. But emotionally, something had changed. The geometry of the AFC East shifted. Fear migrated eastward. Hope migrated westward. Suddenly, Buffalo no longer looked like the only franchise standing on thin ice. That is the real story here. This is not merely a scandal story. This is a pressure transfer story. Sports leagues are emotional ecosystems, whether people admit it publicly or not. One organization's collapse creates oxygen for another organization's survival. Just think of the Patriots of the early 2000s, where Tom Brady dominated the AFC East because of the dysfunctions with the Jets and the Bills and the Miami Dolphins. Now, that is why um, Buffalo feels better about themselves today. So Buffalo becomes Wall Street, where Josh Allen functions like a blue chip stock carrying the emotional retirement accounts of the entire organization. Buffalo becomes emergency infrastructure, where Josh Allen resembles a giant generator keeping the power grid alive after hurricanes destroy the city. Then the AFC East becomes weather systems with storm fronts moving across coastlines and pressure migrating eastward toward Foxborough. Then New England becomes organized religion, a cathedral disrupted by scandal during Sunday service. That is why linked suffering in the NFL matter. The symbolism surrounding the Patriots' collapse matters enormously because New England represents certainty for so long. Once certainty cracks in professional sports, panic spreads quickly. You could almost feel it through television coverage itself. Bright Foxborough podium lights reflected off nervous faces. Executives choose words carefully during interviews. And that is what sports has become now for the New England Patriots. Not football yet, but off season football in chaos. Football no longer behaves like sports alone, it behaves like politics mixed with entertainment, mixed with corporate warfare, mixed with psychology. And the Bills are benefiting emotionally from that chaos, whether anybody inside Buffalo wants to admit it publicly or not. Before the scandal, Buffalo felt isolated in its anxiety. After the scandal unfolds, the entire division suddenly looks fragile. Fragile divisions create hope. That is why I think the Vrabel scandal may have done something deeply ironic. It may have temporarily stabilized the emotional psychology of the Buffalo Bills. Not because Buffalo suddenly improved structurally, not because Joe Brady suddenly became proven, not because Josh Allen's burden disappeared, but because fear moved. That is the hidden force operating underneath professional sports. pressure never disappears, it migrates. And once it migrated toward New England, Buffalo finally got something it desperately needed entering the upcoming season: oxygen from New England. Please like and subscribe.